thank you for coming to this great event. It's such a great honor to be here in Romania. And actually, I've been traveling for the last couple of days, visiting this beautiful country. And I'm really happy and grateful to be here. And I think that's a really great part that Matt shared, being grateful on what we do and what we are able to share. With that, before I kick in, I'd like to take you with me in this journey. And if you're okay, let me take a picture of all those great Magento fans out there. If you can say hi. Hello. There we go. There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Is the clicker working? Here we go. There we go. Yeah, that's the one. I'd like to share a story with you that I have been asked multiple times during events while traveling. And actually, it's an inside story about what do we do actually to manage our product. You can imagine we are at a Meet Magento event, but I will be sharing a little bit more insights on what Adobe Commerce is doing, which is, of course, a really essence for Adobe after all. This is me. Interesting one. I have a little celebration that I wanted to share with you. And with that, if somebody's celebrating something, I would say, definitely in my habit, you need to share a gift. So I brought a small gift for somebody in the audience who's willing. And these are stroopwafels. Not sure if you ever heard about the Dutch delight. I see somebody smiling over in the back. You're not eligible. Actually, while doing these events now for a while, 15 years, I posted on social a celebration. So actually, this event is question mark event that I've been doing now since the last 15 years. So whoever shouts the answer while we may be here will get that small token of appreciation while being here. So whoever comes up with a number on how many Meet Magento events I have visited over the last 15 years is eligible to get the stroopwafels. So how do we manage support at scale? So you can imagine having so many customers, we need to get an army of people managing that on a day-to-day basis. So what I would like to share is a little story on how we operate on a 24/7 scale. Some components will be technical, some a little bit business-driven, more or less for the audience. But we have a 24/7 organization globally. So people waking up early in Sydney, supporting our merchants, taking over into the Singapore zone, going into India, going into EMEA, having multiple teams over here. Even in Romania, we have a small team. So I'm really proud to actually have some Romanians supporting the products here. Then we go over to London, Barcelona, and then, of course, New York, Austin, Los Angeles. And we do this 24/7. Even on the weekends. So you can imagine that if something happens, and actually we have people, let's say in the Middle East, that need support on a Sunday because they have the Friday and Saturday off, but they start on a Sunday. So we need to make sure that we operate at full scale. The organization is a little bit over 250, 300 people doing this full time. So it's a beast of an organization that needs to be managed as efficient as possible. And for doing that, we have monitoring in place. We want to make sure that triaging is taking place at the best level possible. And if there needs to be some ninja investment, and that's the people within the level 2 tier, they need to dive deep, reverse engineer the issue. If it's an issue, back to the product. Even the Magento product, we are able to create a fix. That fix can be delivered as a patch, but also we want to make sure that that patch gets delivered back to the Magento core, because actually the Magento core component, that's still the base for everything, also Adobe Commerce. So we want to make sure that once we create a patch, it's ready through single patches or, of course, within the release build. And we keep monitoring that. And if there's anything that we can do to optimize, we are optimizing and creating automations to doing so. And I have a really interesting story about the automation moving forward. But for doing that, let me give a little bit peek under the hood what's happening with Adobe Commerce on cloud. And actually, I have some technical diagrams, and hopefully it's visible for everybody back in the room. But this more or less gives a drift on how our infrastructure looks like. We want to make sure that our PaaS solution, so platform as a service, is ready to go and able to provide scalability, horizontal and a vertical level. We offer 2 delivery flavors. One is within Azure, and the most common one, I guess, is the one in AWS. And as you can see, moving back and forth, they are kind of similar. So the technology itself doesn't change much, I would say, from a PHP or a database perspective, but in general, it's a different flavor because we have customers that prefer having integrations with external systems that are hosted, let's say, on AWS or on Azure itself. The interesting thing is that once we start scaling that piece, because we are seeing customers that are larger than average, that need a little bit more horsepower, as we say, which means that the scalability on the platform, even from a front-end perspective, we have the ability to connect Adobe Experience Manager. So that's a content management system. So zooming in a little bit, that's not open source. Well, to some degree, I mean, it initiated from an open source component, but a lot of components right now, they are proprietary. But with that, actually, and the interesting thing is, sorry to scroll really quickly, let me go back. On the bottom tier, we have options to scale the front end. I would even say to infinity, but I've worked on a project who's actually in the Middle East, a large retailer, one of the brands maybe you heard of called H&M. They're also running on Adobe Commerce. Well, that specific product or environment has at least 16 front-end nodes at full capacity at AWS and manage a humongous database cluster tier just on production. And in total, the entire brands are around 150, 200 servers, from dedicated QAs to dedicated production, dedicated stagings, multiple stagings, making sure that we are able to scale these kind of products at scale. And that's also support. We want to make sure that performance, well, as you probably maybe have seen, we just finished a Ramadan. That's a really important component within that commercial. Not only Black Friday, Cyber Monday, as we are envisioned, but also these events. They need to be ready for scale. And we are able to do that using new technology. This is not available as we speak, so I'm going to be really clear on that. But we are currently investing options with these larger brands to see if we have opportunities to scale at a larger component and use new technology, native services. We've done some really interesting tests already, so technically speaking, it's working. Now we need to make sure that it's also supported, because having a technology that's working, that's great, but supporting actually the product at scale, that's another challenge. But hopefully soon we will have options available like the Aurora cluster from a database perspective. And that's something that we look forward, but our merchants as well. A little bit on the techie side, let's dive a little bit deep in what a process looks like and how much is actually happening behind the scenes once a ticket gets submitted. So for those in the room who ever submitted a ticket, I guess you're familiar with the support process, but this is a diagram that needs to be updated. I know, I see somebody smiling over here. It's probably a good day. And this is a small peek. And if I'm zooming in, you probably get a drift on what components are actually happening behind the scenes, where we want to make sure we are supporting these merchants in the best way possible. Because without any process, organizations are doomed. And that's really crucial, of course, making sure we deliver the best service back to our merchants. Once the process is in place, strategy is crucial. Because without any strategy, and I think that's something that has been defined by Matthias earlier, you're lost. No strategy helps us to continue. So for doing that, we've defined 3 important pillars to operate support at scale. Because you can imagine, if we have this process and we get flooded with support issues, I mean, at the end, it's like carrying water to the sea. I mean, it never stops. So you need to think smart to help each other. Because it's not about, it's not working, please help us out, Adobe. It's working together and be as efficient as possible. So with that, we introduce one component which is called self-help. Any issue that we come across that has been mentioned before, we write an article on it. Back in the day, we had devdocs.magento.com. Probably you've seen or heard about it. Now, all have been consolidated going into the Experience League. If you find an article, if you're missing an article, please let us know, because the more articles we can create, and actually with some really fancy new technology called AI, we maybe even have the opportunity to use articles based on the comprehensive ticket questions that has been shared. The more information you share, the more the data can speak for itself, and maybe at some point share the article that matches the error or findings you have. We need to help each other. Self-service, that's of course an important one. I will definitely show a little bit more on that going into the whole observability tooling that we use from an automation perspective, but we want to make sure that you guys are self-serve in so many ways where you can figure out what the issue is, but also fix the issue without even submitting a support ticket. And self-healing. I mean, that's maybe the holy grail that everybody's looking for. What options do we have? What alerting do we have that actually provides these tickets even being created? And on that behalf, create solutions where, and this is something that we are working on in our minds, and we created a prototype where if there would be, let's say, a version and that can be patched automatically using tools like GitHub Copilot, you maybe heard of it, and use that technology, create a sandbox on our infrastructure, and if that sandbox is ready to go, maybe do some automated tests where only some manual components need to check, and you will save maybe 75% of all the QA or other environments by just automated patches from a security perspective or any performance issues that we see. Still not on production, so still in a sandbox mode, but if that sandbox mode is approved, that could be going into live. So that really saves up a lot of man work that we are working on behind the scenes. Hopefully that will arise sooner or later, but these are some visionaries where we want to make sure we help each other. With that, a big momentum last year within the ecosystem happened, Magento 2.4.4. Probably you're familiar with that version. Actually, it's a milestone if we're looking at how previous versions were created, and definitely going back to the minimized component. Some of the vendor modules that were initially based in this core component have been removed. We wanted to make sure that we have a lighter, more smoothie version available that not only increase a light, flexible platform, but also reduces the upgrade compatibility, because we've seen too many merchants struggling with so many modules, and that had an impact not only on the total cost of ownership, TCO, but also on, at the end, of course, the return of investment. So we want to make sure that the product as of 2.4.4 is as lightweight as possible. And on top of that, we create these patches. So as you've seen in the previous slide, we have the opportunity to create the patches and deploy them while using the patch tool. So if you ever need a patch, use the official patch tool opportunity, deploy, and benefit from that. So what's the future going to hold? Where are we and what are we thinking? And I've already shared little components that we are working on, but actually these are some of the things that not only myself, but also going back on the old Magento days, finally we have tooling and technology available that really sets us apart as a developer and helps us to be smarter instead of working harder. So I got a small demo that I want to show. Before I show, let's see if audio is working, because I need some audio on the video. I got a green light, so let's move on. There we go.
Often, Adobe Commerce receives requests from a customer asking for site best practice, suggestions for configuration, ideas for performance improvement, how to increase site speed, what the logs mean, and more. For each of these requests, a support ticket is created. However, frequently the customer attempts different configurations, implements custom modules, pushes a deployment, or makes other business and functional changes. All of these actions affect the site's health, and this requires the customer to create extra support tickets to verify the site's health and stability, explain what's wrong, or just request a fix. Hey, wouldn't it be great if there was a more efficient way to check Adobe Commerce site health and get all the recommendations all at once? Well, yes, there is. It's called a site-wide analysis tool, and it's totally free, by the way. It's a tool developed to perform an end-to-end analysis of a customer's site and generate a report with the results. A site-wide analysis tool generates a PDF created exclusively for the Adobe Commerce Cloud customer, containing the site end-to-end findings consisting of the issues found and the associated follow-up recommendations. Included in the site-wide analysis tool report's findings are the site's health, performance, and configuration at a specific point in time. The customer then reviews the delivered report, is responsible for understanding the findings, and executing the prescribed recommendations. However, if a specific finding requires Adobe support help, the customer simply opens a new support ticket, one for each specific issue in question, and of course references the original delivered report support ticket.
Who has worked with SWOT before? Okay, a couple of hands. Did you like it? Keep your hands up. Okay, only one. Interesting, interesting. Well, thanks for sharing and being honest. The question would be, have you been using SWOT on a day-to-day basis? Actually, and this is an interesting one that we've seen many times, SWOT has been there now for 3 years. But actually, what a lot of people are not aware of, although it's a SaaS solution, we are pushing releases on a regular basis. So even in a Scrum phase, every 2 weeks, minor updates are happening on this platform. And the reason is that once we detect issues, and you probably have seen some security issues coming around on a regular basis, once we detect it, we create a solution and a reporting alert into the SWOT database. So using SWOT even on a day-to-day basis is more beneficial than just using it as a reporting tool. True, there is a business side effect on having a report, but actually as a developer, being there, being smart and using it on a regular basis really helps to mitigate any support issues. Because sometimes we get support questions. Once one of our engineers does any triaging, they look at the report and they see like 5, 6 P1s, P0s. Well, that's an alert. If that matches already the exception log criteria that has been reported, well, it's a quick find. That's the self-help component. So we want to make sure using the self-help, using these solutions helps before submitting a support ticket, because it's much quicker. So I definitely encourage everybody who's using SWOT or hasn't, please find out and see the benefit from that. Because not only the dashboard, which is pretty appealing, of course, but also using the best practices and recommendation. And as I mentioned, all the log files are being analyzed on a regular basis. Some of them even hourly, some of them once 24 hours. But based on the feedback or exception errors that we find in these logs, compare those to all other logs, we are much easier to find any issues or anomalies that apply to specific versions. So if there would be a new release and we find an issue in that specific version and we see more merchants having the same issue, building that patch is much easier for us to do instead of using a single case. There's also more details on the products, available patches, as I just mentioned. The reporting, of course, and these are some of the numbers. That's why it was good to get some numbers there. We see more adoption happening globally. I've been doing this session now for a while, and we've seen more and more benefits. And definitely, once I finish the talk and we get around, have a couple of, drinks. Well, it's pretty early, so we keep it with water for now. But finding out, seeing the benefit on their projects helps the health score, because there is a health score. And my personal ambition would be, if you use SWOT, please go into a 50 or even 75% health score range, because that will mitigate any performance issues. And less performance issues is, well, making me and my team happier, but also having the merchant more happy. And if the merchant is happy, they are happy about the product. And that's, I think, why we are here, using great solutions and great tooling. If you are not on the Adobe Cloud, no worries, there is a solution for on-prem. So if you're using Adobe Commerce, please go to the process on the Experience League, download the model, follow all the steps, and you are able to analyze the content yourself. Interesting thing is, thanks to SWOT, right now, we are able to train new developers. I think, alluding back to Matthias, cherishing those new developers, not only on social, but using the right tools. If they are not trained well, using SWOT to share what findings or best practice recommendations can be used to actually launch a better site before going into production. Actually, SWOT helps. Once you start using and provisioning an environment and analyze the data, and you fix all the recommendations are being shared, you get a much stable product even before going live, instead of fixing things at the end. This is a list on some of the P1s or alertings that we've seen: upcache, caching components, indexing, L2 caches, MySQL slaves. We are really going deep on what recommendations we can offer, making sure we deliver the best product out there and actually best practice use of the product itself. So with that...
Welcome. The site-wide analysis tool is a central repository that provides a single pane of glass view of our support tools. It will allow you to get real-time access to all system insights, proactive steps to resolve any site problems, and monitor overall site health. To get access to the SWOT dashboard, go to your Magento admin panel page. Accept the terms and conditions. On the dashboard, you will find access to support tools such as the Upgrade Compatibility tool, Security Scan tool, Best Practice Recommendations, and Managed Alerts. Recommendations. With 24/7 site monitoring, the tool can scan the site for performance, stability, and security issues. The Upgrade Compatibility tool checks an Adobe Commerce instance against the latest version of Commerce. It returns a list of critical issues that must be addressed before upgrading to the latest version of Adobe Commerce. The Security Scan tool provides Adobe Commerce customers with real-time insights into the security status of their store by proactively detecting malware and notifying them if their store is compromised. You can also access other support resources from this widget, such as the Information and Extension tabs. The Quality Patches tool lists all the currently available patches. This feature makes it easier to locate the right patches to fix known issues. Originally, the site-wide analysis tool was only available for cloud customers, but we are excited to announce that we have expanded its availability to all Adobe Commerce customers hosted on-prem as well. Our goal is to help you create better commerce experiences for your customers, and we believe that with the help of the site-wide analysis tool and all the other support tools that we offer, you will be able to give your customers the best experience possible.
Interesting thing is, we are speaking about open source. And we had corporate discussion on Matthias earlier this morning. Actually, we started using that same vision with Adobe on, well, not only giving something back into a SaaS solution, but also having developers help us or help each other to create solutions. So last year, we adopted an API, currently only available internally, but it gave my team, so not the dedicated team that's developing SWOT, but our developers team, our support engineers, the ability to create support wrappers. And what are wrappers? These are small widgets, like YAML files that actually have bash commands. So if you want to do, let's say, a list of processes on Linux or processes on the database or retrieve a specific query and get data, normally you need to go into SSH and do everything manually, or you create a bash script and you run it. So it's a lot of manual work. Actually, right now, with these snippets, we were able to get a little bit more deeper. And the flexibility of the snippet is that once you create one snippet, it's scalable for all merchants, and that's the fun of it. So right now we are thinking on how can we expose that, and well, the API is already internally, it's ready. The vision on the roadmap is to see if we can export this API functionality where, well, a Git repository, pull requests, etc. There might be an option to adapt this, where everybody could participate, create a wrapper that hasn't been available, and submit that, where you could either run this locally or run this at scale where a release gets pushed. So this means that more data that helps us to get this system stable will be available. So small insight. Actually, live services are able to monitor root cause analysis. So if we see something in New Relic, the data gets pulled automatically into SWOT. And as I mentioned, it's happening on the fly. So every 2 weeks, more or less, small releases, bigger releases will be shared into SWOT. But what's the future? And I know we are a little bit over time, so I'm going to push it a little bit. Hopefully you don't mind. But we want to make sure that alerting or automatic alerting happens on the fly. We call this swarming automation. If we see an issue happening, we want to make sure that not only the tickets get created, but also Slack channels get created, automatically pull all the engineers that are necessary based on their skill set, and to mitigate that issue as quickly as possible. We use open source tooling for that, and that's an interesting one. So not only is Magento open source, we at Support also use open source, and we use a platform called StackStorm. And with that, let me share a quick demo.
StackStorm is an event-driven automation platform used in a variety of scenarios, including auto remediation, security event handling, and infrastructure automation. For example, if you had a security appliance at the edge of your infrastructure inspecting packets for anomalies, it could alert Sensu of potential bad actors. A StackStorm workflow can take action on this information and provision the security appliance to ignore future packets from that sender. To abstract a wide variety of tasks, including the one we just looked at, StackStorm employs a few key primitives. Those primitives are sensors, rules, and actions. A sensor looks at events either directly from an event producer, such as the security appliance we saw earlier, or through existing monitoring tools, like Nagios or Sensu. An action is an operation StackStorm can take within your environment. It can be a simple atomic task, like submitting a REST request to an API, or a more complex workflow consisting of multiple actions and decision tree logic. Rules tie these sensors and tasks together. You configure rules in an if-this, then-that type of logic. For instance, in our security appliance example, our rule would be configured so that if Sensu receives a bad actor notice, StackStorm should run a workflow to add that bad actor to a blocked list. You might be thinking, this is great, but do I have to build all of these integrations? The simple answer is no. StackStorm has a community of contributors that have helped grow the StackStorm Exchange to over 100 different integrations. You can find these integrations at exchange.stackstorm.org.
How cool is this? Using open source to support our open source solutions. Using these components, it's not rebuilding or reinventing the wheel, but use components that make sense. And that helps us to support our merchants in a more cohesive way. Some feedback or results that we've seen for using these sources. So I'm going to quickly move through that, but we see that using, internally we call this Siron, but using StackStorm on our behalf, it really reduced the efficiency using that on any given ticket. Actually, we saved nearly 300 hours of work last year just by using automation in our build processes. That's a big chunk. That means that we can support more customers in a more efficient way just by using automation at our disposal. And our teams, they are loving it. So some key takeaways, customer first. That's the main approach that we live by within support. Second is team. Without a team, you cannot build anything. And lastly, but not least, it's all about automation. Think smart, not hard. With that, well, if you're interested, hit me up. Always interested in learn about you and see if that would be a good fit. And other than that, thank you for being here. My pleasure.
Thank you. Now, although we are over time, I think we have time for a question. Are there any questions?
I'm still missing the answer, by the way, so I'm not sure who found it. Oh, 39? No, no. Sorry? 500? No, no, no. 82, no.
Happy 30.
You're close, by the way. 90. No.
30.
Sorry?
30.
30. Who says 30? Yes. Please. Nice to meet you. Enjoy.
Thank you.
And now for the question. There it is.
Will you add features to SWOT for filtering on exceptions?
Filtering on exceptions.
Yeah, I have some exceptions that usually are part of the normal operations, and they come up all the time, and those are not a problem for the website.
Okay. Yeah, there's no advanced filtering as we speak, but I'm happy to discuss more details on what's missing so we can learn about that and see if that's applicable to apply solutions like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, guys.